You're listening to the Cynic Radio Podcast. Now, your hosts, Igri and Cynic.
You are listening to episode 27 of the CRP, and I'm your host, Cynic. And with me, as always, the United Airlines Head of Customer Relations and my good pal, Igri. Back again this week are our good friends, Jules and Linda. This week, the podcast fires up the time machine, and we take you all the way back to Halloween night, 2010, as we review the first ever episode of the future global sensation, The Walking Dead. Episode 1, Days Gone By. Because we are the Cynic Radio Podcast, and we believe if you buy a seat, you should get a seat. Hashtag boycott United. Miss out on that latest viral video? Didn't see the most recent trailer for the next movie coming out? In the dark about what the biggest song in America is? We've got you covered. Every week we scour the internet and look for the latest and greatest. This is What's Up.
My What's Up this week is for Zeke Smith from this season's Survivor Game Changers. Well, this season has been stellar for Survivor fans with many twists and turns, but the one that took place this week was one I'd never thought I would see on Survivor. Obviously, in a game for $1 million, lines become blurry as to what is ethically okay to do in order to reach that goal. One season, a survivor said his grandmother died to gain sympathy. Another actually even voted out her own mother. This week, though, Jeff Varner took it to a whole new level when, in a rare moment of letting one's guard down in this dastardly game, Zeke had confided to Varner that he was transgender off camera. When it came to a tribal council, it was obvious Varner was going home, and he threw one last pernicious Hail Mary in an attempt to save himself, and he threw Miller, the only person who actually cared about him and was feeling bad about voting him out, under the bus and suggested that everyone was lying and no one was to be trusted, and he turned to Zeke and asked how come he had not told anyone he was transgender, as if to imply Zeke was committing the ultimate deception. But this woefully blew up in Varner's face as the visceral reaction from everyone on his tribe, Jeff Probst, and the viewing public was swift with outrage and disgust. The what's up part of this is Zeke and the way he had the ultimate blindside thrown at him and handled it with the utmost class and dignity and refrained from his own visceral reaction, I'm sure, which was to punch Varner out, and even ultimately hugged Varner as he was unanimously voted off. Zeke Smith was thrust into the LGBTQ spotlight with no realization about what was to come, but he has shown that any fallacies that include transgender people as deceitful people must be abolished immediately. So to your grace, in the midst of a desperate, heinous move, Zeke Smith, you are what's up.
What's up for me this week is the trailer for the upcoming Marvel movie Thor Ragnarok. I think Kevin Smith said it best when he said, imagine living in a time where the third Thor movie looks better than the first. Sequels only used to get worse. And he's right. It looks just amazing, with destruction from top to bottom, courtesy of Hela, the Asgardian goddess of death. The trailer also features the perfectly placed immigrant song by Led Zeppelin, and is capped by an incredible cameo by Thor's very good friend from work. Odds are this will be the last standalone Thor movie with Hemsworth as the God of Thunder, and they quite possibly saved the best for last. The trailer can be found on YouTube, and the movie hits theaters November 3rd of this year. I never thought I'd say it, but Thor Ragnarok, you're what's up.
Oh my God, here it is. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, the new trailer for Star Wars The Last Jedi, Episode 8, is finally here. This trailer is amazing. It looks so good. It is beautifully shot, and there is so much drama and suspense going on in this trailer. I cannot wait for the full trailer and the movie set to release on December 14th. Go and check it out. It's everywhere on the internet. YouTube's probably your easiest bet. Star Wars The Last Jedi, coming to you later this year. The trailer is beautiful. That's what's up.
As we move back through to a much simpler time, Halloween night, 2010, long before anyone told anyone else to cash them outside, and we were still respected the little things, say like the Office of the Presidency. AMC brought us a very little heard about show based off a Robert Kirkman comic book called The Walking Dead. Other than the opening for Breaking Bad, which I admit I came in slightly late for, I never saw a show with an opening with such powerful imagery. Rick sees the poor little fuzzy bunny slipper girl wandering through the gas station, and he says, "Little girl, I'm a policeman. Don't be afraid." Seconds before having to put her down. There are very few times in your life where you find true love. And in that moment, I knew we were on the cusp of something special. IG, were you there on opening night, or did you catch up on the series later?
I was there on opening night, and funny story, I was living in Hawaii at the time, so the time change and everything, it was right when kids were coming in trick-or-treating, and I was excited for this show to come. So I literally had my oldest daughter and my wife. I'm like, you need to handle this because I'm watching this show. I just want to see what it's about because I think there's going to be something great. And oh my God, I'm so glad that I did. The first 3 minutes of the show have held on to me for all of this time. I literally will schedule everything around making sure that I'm around to watch The Walking Dead.
So when I first saw this show, I wasn't there for the opening night. I definitely watched it after. It was definitely something that I heard through word of mouth that I had to see. I believe I was in college at the time, so I had to find someone who actually paid for cable and had DVR'd it, and I had to make sure to watch it afterwards. But yeah, it definitely came to me through word of mouth.
I myself watched it someplace where you probably shouldn't be watching TV, but not once, but twice that night. So I won't say where to not get myself in trouble, but I was hooked from the very instant the show started till it ended. I mean, I just sat there in awe of it. So to go back and relive it was pretty special for me. I mean, out of all the episodes, which I've watched multiple times, this has been the episode that I've watched the most. They even went back a few years ago and did it in black and white, which really gave it a completely different feel. Going into it, though, the only thing I knew about it was based off a semi-underground comic book, but also that the director of The Shawshank Redemption, Frank Darabont, was not only wrote and directed the episode, but was also the showrunner. Jules, what was your initial reaction to the opening sequence with the little girl at the gas station?
Well, I think it's just sort of jarring, and right from jump, okay, this is not going to be what it's not some sort of tame TV show when he's shooting a little girl, within the first few minutes. It does definitely grab you. And now I've talked to people who immediately turned it off after that. They didn't want to see anymore. So to me, that kind of stuff, I'm like, oh, I got to see what else is happening here.
Kind of taking a break from the series and then coming back. Linda, what did you think of the opening sequence?
I thought the opening sequence was startling, but obviously in a very good, dramatic, intense way. It's not very often that we see violence against children, and we definitely don't see violence against little girls on screen. So to have the first scene be a monstrous little girl attacked made it incredibly memorable and incredibly engaging in a way that was like, oh my God, what are they going to do next?
The show opens with a very strong and ominous theme song, which still rings true today. The episode starts with Rick and Shane having lunch. Rick asks Shane what's the difference between men and women. Shane responds he never met a woman who knew how to turn off a light switch. They're born thinking that the switch only goes one way. After Reverend Shane is done testifying, what was your initial reaction to his character, Julie?
He seemed like a good little buddy, like a little side buddy. And, he was there talking to Rick, and he, wanted to hear about Rick's life, and he didn't want Rick just passing him off. When he asked what's going on, he said, I really want to know, talk to me. I think my impression of him was that he was a good friend to Rick, and they'd spent a lot of time together.
Yeah, he definitely reeked of the alpha male. IG, what was your opinion of Shane's character after his little women don't know how to turn off the light?
Well, I really liked him. I thought that he had some personality. I thought that he had some charisma, and I thought that he was somebody that seemed important in the show. I was hoping at that moment that he wasn't just going to be here for right now and then he's gone. It was somebody that kind of pulled me in. So I just had that desire because when I was first watching this, all of a sudden there's just Rick and he's wandering around and there's dead people everywhere and it's just Rick shortly after this. So I was hoping he wasn't just gone. That would have been detrimental to my watching
the show. You could at least yelled spoiler alert. Anyway, Rick talks to Shane about an ongoing issue he has with his wife Lori, and also the impact that it has on his son Carl. Shane displays an odd reaction by kind of looking away, and you get the sense that he knew a little more about the tension than... Did you get the sense, Linda, that he knew a little more about the tension, or was it just a guy being uncomfortable discussing someone else's feelings? I
got the feeling that he had a better idea about what was going on in the Grimes household than maybe Rick assumed he did. I sort of saw that scene as a way for not only Shane to gauge Rick's reaction, but for Shane to sort of cover his own ass in a way. But yeah, I definitely got the vibe that he had a pretty clear idea of a lot of the issues that were happening. And we sort of saw that later on in the episode or later on in the season, I think, when we actually saw Lori talking to another mom in the minutes before Shane pulls up and tells her Rick's been shot.
Yeah, I think there was definitely an implication, or it was implied that just like Linda said, that he knew a little bit more. But I guess I kind of thought maybe she might. I don't think I thought there was like a relationship, like a sexual relationship. I think I thought maybe she would possibly be reaching out to him as a friend for help, understanding, what's going on with her husband and what she could do to make their relationship better, maybe.
I've made this face a few times myself, and it's almost, I have a few friends that constantly tell you the same stories over and over again because they forget that they've forgotten that they've told you. And I kind of make the same face too, like I'm kind of looking away, and I don't want to give the fact that they're repeating themselves because they're so enthusiastic about what they're saying. So I'm like, and I got that sense off of Shane too. I think he knew a little more than what was being let on, and he didn't want to give it away to Rick because Rick is pretty apt at reading people and being best friends. You want to kind of keep that out of not making eye contact said a lot in that moment. What do you think, IG?
Well, quite honestly, I'm just kind of giggling here because, like, Julie is trying to cover for him a little bit. It's like,
What?
trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. Oh, he's just reaching out as a friend. Look, the true honesty of this is most women won't reach out to other men to say, what do you think, without there being the possibility of something going on, in my experience. And I'm not saying this is 100% and it's true and it is never going to go the other way. But when women are coming to you going, oh, well, this person that you're really close with is kind of making me upset a little bit. So how are you?
I mean, I've had guys come to me and say,
I'm not saying guys can't go that direction. I'm saying that women tend to be disenchanted with their men when they're going the other way. And should the cards be played properly, the guy might be trying to see what he can do with that relationship. I'm just saying. I'm not saying it's 100%. Linda's about to have a heart attack. I get this. But it does happen, and it's very, very normal in the world.
See,
Sorry. My only argument for Lori reaching out to Shane is because Shane and Rick are so close. They're best friends, they're partners. There's literally no one in Rick's life that he spends more time with than Shane and Lori. So I mean, I could just...
but you got to remember bro code. So if he knows things... Bro code got broken because Rick should be able to say stuff to Shane without Shane saying
that
anything.
I can understand why Lori would be like, Shane, you're my husband's best friend and partner, and you literally spend hours and hours and hours in the car with him. Can you give me some insight into what he's thinking? And I'm not saying that Shane has ever said anything, but I'm saying it's totally reasonable in my mind for Lori to reach out to her husband's best friend and ask for an opinion. Once. I mean,
once. Once it goes past that initial conversation.
But I have a feeling it wasn't
once it goes past that initial conversation, there's a problem.
You're right. You're 100% right about that.
We don't know if it's gone past one conversation. We only see very small snippets. So
that look from Shane, it's been more than once.
Yeah. Well, now we're getting into Love Line
over at the Motel 6, I think.
Their last conversation, there wasn't a lot of talking.
Whatever.
Their lunch gets broken up. They get a call. There's a chase. They intersect with a bunch of other cops, set up a blockade, and spikes. Rick brings Leon to heel by telling him to make sure he's got one in the chamber and his safety off and to be ready. Car comes, it flips over. Rick takes charge. But IG, then he walks out into a firefight without a cover, takes one to the vest and then one to the side. Does that speak volumes to the type of leader that Rick is? Is he careless?
He's absolutely careless at that point. I mean, there's no reason to come out of cover at that point. No reason to get out from behind the car. And I know that they needed to do this for more video-worthy stuff on the show. They needed to make it seem more exciting. They didn't need to follow protocols and things like that to make sure that the officers maintained safety. But you weren't sure that everything was clear. All right, 2 people got shot. You took one in the chest, but you were wearing your bulletproof vest. All right, great. Don't tell Lori, I'm fine. Look. But you didn't clear the vehicle and make sure there isn't somebody else in there.
Right, like that's...
You weren't done.
That should be police work 101, right?
Well, that should be, oh my God, is anybody else still coming 101? I mean, haunted house, whatever. I mean, is something else still happening? Maybe I better get out of here, move, get behind something, go check the car. Something. Military training in me says there's no way I would have been turning and talking to my buddy. I'd have been going to see if these guys are still breathing, because the police officers still have a duty to see if these guys are still alive, because once they've stopped shooting at you, it's then their job to make sure, can we save them? Because now we want to prosecute them. We don't want just corpses laying here. I mean, it kind of messed with me a little bit in that way.
Could it also be that they're just a small town sheriff department and they don't see this kind of, it seemed like it was a bit out of their element, maybe.
Yeah, but
maybe they just were thrown.
They had the guys outgunned, and outmanned. I mean, on top of what they had outside the cars, they also had the police that were chasing them. There was no reason for Rick to move in the way he did. It made me think that maybe in this instance he was kind of more of a do as I say, not as I do type leader. I think the only thing he was missing is that slight head nod or the lean to the left that he does, and I think he would have been fine. He wouldn't have got shot or anything. Everyone would have been taken out with a headshot and one, maybe one clip. Rick goes into a coma. Shane brings him flowers. They don't give us any idea how long Rick has been unconscious for. He kind of passes back up, wakes up and thinks Shane's still there, but by the looks of the flowers, a large amount of time has passed. IG, do you have any idea how long Rick was out for?
Well, out with nobody around, I would guess probably about 2 weeks. I was kind of thinking between the state of the flowers, beard growth, and everything else, kind of seemed about a 2-week period.
Yeah, I agree. Looking at the flowers and definitely the facial hair, I mean, unless he's Teen Wolf and grows it overnight, it looked like it had been a couple weeks. So let's take a second and put ourselves in Rick's shoes. Linda, if you were Rick and you were to wake up in these very odd circumstances, what would you be thinking?
Well, I have the benefit of having watched The Walking Dead. So I might be thinking like, yep, I'm the left behind. There's been some sort of revelation and I was not chosen. And that's okay. I would be freaked out. I would be really, really freaked out. And my first thought, I think, same as Rick, would be like, where the fuck is my family? What am I wearing? Like, where are my shoes? Like, I need to get out. I think that would have been my first thought. I don't know if I would have been as eager to explore the hospital. I would have definitely tried to leave more immediately than it seemed Rick was willing to leave.
As he gets up and he gets out of his room finally, he some reason the water is still working, but nothing else is. He finds what looks to be a hospital bed or a stretcher in front of his door, which comes into play in a later episode. Rick wanders through the worn-torn hospital where he encounters carnage and pretty much blood everywhere. And then he sees the very iconic "do not open, dead inside," chained and barred doors with hands peeking through. Jules, after seeing the door that conventional wisdom would tell you to stay away from and beat fucking feet, but we all have that one person in our life that would go over and still try to investigate the situation. In your life, who would that be?
Who would go and investigate? I don't know. I know a lot of like cowardly people, I guess. Or smart. Maybe I just know a lot of smart people. Because I sure wouldn't.
Yeah, I think Jules' family is going to listen to this show next week and they're going to be like, cowardly.
Maybe my brother Brad. Maybe my brother Brad. But that's about as far as I'm going to throw that out there. Like, I can't think of anyone that would be like, I think I'll just keep going into this bad situation.
How about you, Belinda? Is there anybody in your life that would go investigate the door?
I'll be honest, it would be me. If I were not having holes in me, if I was well and not just out of a coma, it would definitely be me. Also, in the comic books, Rick actually does open the door, so at least I'm in good company.
IG, I'm calling your oldest daughter, but what do you think?
You called it right. She would totally be there, and she would be there with Linda. And my daughter, I have a multiracial family, so it's a multiracial daughter, but she likes to claim she's white, but I'm going to put her in the group here with Linda, where you are both very, very white, like in a horror movie, where the white people decide, yeah, we're going to stay and go and see what's going on. I'm going to run past the door that gets me away from danger and run upstairs where I'm trapped.
We wouldn't split up, okay?
Yeah, that doesn't save you from a horde of walkers. Especially when all you have to save you is an IV tube and a back open robe because you're in a hospital.
The last thing we ever heard Linda say was, I'll be right back.
Ridiculous. The abuse.
Rick freaks out and runs to the stairwell, which is very dark, armed with nothing but the world's worst matches. So, Julie, how much would it take for you to venture down those scary-ass stairs with those very shitty matches?
Again, I'm not leaving the hospital like Linda said. I'm probably back in my room just planning how I'm going to die in that room. I would certainly not go down that dark stairwell with those terrible matches. There's no amount of money or anything in the world that would make me do that. I can't do it in a haunted house. I wouldn't do it in a real life situation.
And not only that, but he didn't look out any windows. I mean, it's a hospital. There's windows everywhere. He didn't even look outside. He's like, all right, there's a don't open dead inside thing here. I've got these shitty matches. I'm going to go into the stairwell where I don't know what the fuck is going on, but I haven't looked outside or anything. I mean, even if it's raining, wouldn't you want to grab like a newspaper to hold over your head, something? Come on. You don't have any clothes. You don't have anything going on. Don't even look outside to see. I mean, is there help out there? Is there anything out there?
Yeah.
Nothing. No, I'm just going to go back down here to the nurse's station, which is all dark, dig through something, come upon some matches that only stayed lit for 4 seconds apiece. Let's do this.
I think you're being generous with 4. I really think it was like a 2-second strike time on that thing. I don't know what had happened to them. I don't know what store they got them from, but I would hope that they went and got a refund before everybody died.
Yeah, they're like flame-resistant matches or something. I mean, what's going on with that? I mean, do you have matches that say on them, do not use near fire or flame?
What is the deal with these matches?
He
He gets outside to a never-ending sea of body bags and destruction. I don't know about you folks, but getting back into that coma seems like a tremendous idea right now. IG, what are your thoughts of Rick's current situation after seeing what's happened inside and outside the hospital? What would you do next?
I think my first thing would be try to find some fucking shoes. And maybe this is just a personal thing. I hate fucking being barefoot outside of my house. It's like I can feel the dirt. And if all that's around you is dead bodies and stuff, I'm not going to just feel dirt. I'm going to swear to God that there's like blood and guts and shit all over my feet. I need some fucking shoes. That's
Truth.
step one. Get some goddamn shoes.
Very good point.
Well, I agree, and knowing that they're in Georgia, Georgia is famous for fire ants, so that would be my luck, is I'd survived only to be swarmed and killed by fire ants on my way back to my house. Shoes would definitely be a priority. Julie, what would you do? Where would be the first place you would head?
I think it was... I would probably run home too, because you're trying to, I think this whole situation is obviously discombobulating. You don't know what's going on. He just came out of a coma. So I think the first thing you probably are thinking of is safety, your home. So I think I would have ran home too.
Rather than try to take one of the many, and I say many, abandoned vehicles in and around the hospital, Rick chooses to take a half-naked stroll through the park where he encounters a very noteworthy scene from the show. Our very first walker, later named Bicycle Girl. And if you're interested in her at all, they did a great run of webisodes about her. It fills you in her backstory, where she started, how she ended up the way she did. It's actually pretty compelling, and it's a halfway decent watch. Linda, not being a huge fan of the show, but seeing the comic book before, what were your thoughts visually on our first walker, or in Bicycle Girl's case, our first crawler?
Honestly, the first episode did a really great job of sticking to the narrative and the visual feel of the comic books, so I was pretty impressed by that, and I also really enjoyed it because it sort of set the scene like, oh, the things that I had problems with in the comic books were very much more apparent in the television show. Like, they didn't seem so much as problems, but just like, oh, they actually thought about this and they reconsidered it when they went back and they shot the show and they wrote the script for this. My first vision of Bicycle Girl was like just kind of gross and worm-like. And I don't know, it was striking, but it definitely wasn't the little girl in bunny slippers. You know, it was definitely like the other side of it where it's like, okay, this is really not human anymore.
I thought it was visually impressive as all hell, and I guess if I were Rick, I'm not sure I would have walked out of that the same way he did, because I might have been way more freaked out. That would have fucked me up. And trying to get home at that point might have been like, I'm just going to fall down here, pass out, and she's going to bite me. And hey, The Walking Dead is now over. But holy shit, was that a really well done job of makeup? Because that was amazing to see the first time.
Yeah, Greg Nicotero is definitely something special, and it's, you know, as the show's gone on and his name has gotten bigger, he's started to cross over to more and more movies and even some TV shows. His visual effects are really on par, and he's a great director too on top of that. Rick returns home to find Lori has taken off, and I mean, can you blame her? We also get our very first in a long line of Andrew Lincoln yelling Coral. He comes outside to the stoop, and in the process, he gets bashed in the face. So, Jules, I'll ask you this now. Dwayne Jones, concerned citizen or angry juvenile delinquent with a shovel?
I think he's a concerned citizen. I think, it's kind of funny because again, we're not sure exactly how much time has transpired. How many people has Dwayne and Morgan run into to know whether or not who's a walker and who isn't. But I think if I'd been out there with all these walkers, you might be a little bit trigger or shovel happy to knock people out if they look even remotely suspicious.
Real quickly, though, the funny thing is, running back, does anyone else find it even just a little bit odd that a sheriff's deputy in Georgia doesn't have one more gun in his house anywhere?
That's a good point.
And he came out with still no fucking shoes.
He could have had his own shoes.
He was trying to find Laurie and Coral.
Couldn't he have done that better, put on some Nikes and gone running down the road or something? I mean, come on. He is a dad. He's got that white pair of Nikes. Every dad's got them. I've got a pair of them.
No. Most dads,
they just come when you become
rock
a father.
the New Balance. They don't rock Nikes.
Oh my God, my husband has New Balance.
Yep. Sorry, Marcus. Knocked silly, Morgan demands to know what Rick's wound is. He passes out, and he awakes tied to a bed. So, Julie, I'll jump to you first. Have you ever woken up tied to a bed?
Yeah, I mean, that's like a normal Tuesday for me.
So I figured.
Nice. This is now turning into another What is Love episode. Here we go,
no,
ladies
I have
and gentlemen.
never woke up tied to a bed.
Great Morgan line in the process. I ask, you answer. That's only common courtesy, right? Between Dwayne's garden tool antics and Morgan brandishing a knife, the Joneses don't seem like the most trusting lot. Rick clears up that he's only been shot, and they start to give him context to everything that's happened since he's been in the coma. We find out that sound and light attract the walkers. We also find out Morgan hates terrible grammar. Violence against strangers with lawn tools is okay, but poor grammar is where he draws the line. What does it say, IG, about Morgan's character that he saved Rick and tended to his wounds?
Quite honestly, I mean, this gives us some foreshadowing of who Morgan really is. Although Morgan has some times in this series where it turns completely a different direction, at heart, Morgan is a good person, and Morgan cares. And he sees that Rick is hurt, but Rick isn't turned. And it's almost like he feels necessary to help him. Because he could have just left him there on the street, went back home with his son, and whatever happens to you happens to you. Instead, that had to be an arduous task, because even if it's only a block down, picking up dead weight of a full-grown man and carting it back to your house with walkers walking around and everything else, that can't be easy. And he did it anyway, and then took him upstairs and tied him to a bed. So, I didn't see him going, my head hurts. You banged me on the stairs 8 or 9 times. Nope, he was very careful, got him up there, put a new dressing on. It was very impressive, and then even without further knowledge of Morgan, at that moment, he seemed like a very compassionate man.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if I'm going to be bashed in the face by anybody's kid, I guess I want it to be Morgan's, because he's going to pick you up afterwards. They explained to Rick that if you get bitten, you die, and you come back. Rick displays a bit of an odd reaction. Linda, do you think he believed them?
No, absolutely not. This was not something that he was prepared to deal with. This was not something that he had any knowledge of. It just seemed, to him, they were telling fantasy stories. Like, he did not, until he would see it with his own eyes, like the actual death and the revival, he wouldn't believe it, I don't think.
Yeah, even when he took the first one down, he asked them again, are you sure that these people aren't alive? I mean, I don't think he fully grasped what was going on until he had to take the first 1 or 2 down, even via gun. IG, what did you think of Rick's reaction?
Rick's reaction was pretty appropriate at the moment. This is all new, and can you imagine waking up in a world where nothing is as it was before? It's got to be jarring. It's got to be strange, and it's got to be something that it's going to take some time and take some convincing to wrap your head around.
My only criticism of the first show, and they did this one other time in the 1 or 2 other times, which kind of broke what the mantra "what a walker" is. This first show, Morgan's now deceased walker wife walks up to the door and begins turning the knob. And also at the very beginning of the episode, the fluffy bunny slipper girl stopped and picked up her stuffed animal in the opening scene. Other than that, they've kind of stuck true to them really having no motor functions, only bumping into things. But that was my only real true criticism of the first episode. Morgan said he didn't have it in him to put his wife down. IG, can you name the one person in your life you would absolutely not be able to pull the trigger on?
Oh, it's got to be you, Cynic. I couldn't pull the trigger on you.
I'll handle it for you.
No, it'd probably be my children. That would be rough. I mean, I love my wife, I really do. But if I knew what was going on, trying to put her down would be very difficult, but easier than trying to do it to my children. So it's not that I see some of the looks coming across here. It's not that my wife is not important to me, but, anybody that's a parent knows that, if you have to give up your spouse or your child, spouse goes immediately.
Not only that, but like my spouse would expect me to do that. He wouldn't want me to spare him and kill my kids.
Well, I don't think it's necessarily a choice, but what would be the one that's the most difficult for you? I mean, it's not one or the other. You're not saving one and killing the other. It's just which one emotionally would you just not be able to pull the trigger on? Linda, do you have anybody in your life that you just would not be able to do it?
It's like Sophie's Choice over here.
I think the hardest person for me would definitely be my mother. She's just like a really, really strong woman, and just sort of understanding how she would end up and how it would just hurt her and affect her, and then having to deal with the fact that I made that decision. It would definitely be my mom.
And the funny thing is we're all saying this, but you have to remember that it really isn't your mom anymore. It's really not my child or my wife or Marcus or anybody else. They're not that person anymore. They have died, and they're basically a shell that walks around wanting to eat people. So while I would have a hard time, I think me especially, as it really got to the end of it, and once I gained an understanding that they're not people, they'd all get blown up. I might find new and impressive ways to do each one of them.
And that's the root of the question, because if you just watch it from an outsider's perspective, nobody understands the struggle that Morgan's really going through. It's like, oh, she's not really your wife anymore. But if you put it in the context of, but what if it was you? Would you be able, is there anybody in your life you just wouldn't be able to pull the trigger on? And for Morgan, that's his wife.
It definitely makes sense. I mean, I never thought that he was being unreasonable or that he was being, or that he was disassociating from the problem. I always thought that it was just, this is someone that he loves and cherishes, and to really truly say goodbye to them in a very brutal, terrifying, horrifying way. Yeah, it's hard. So I totally understood where he was coming from and why he had that hesitation.
They tell Rick about Alana. I can't imagine him not knowing about Alana, but they tell Rick a lot about Alana and the safe zone setup and the supplies and the CDC. IG, in that situation, what's your play? What do you do if you're Rick Grimes?
Well, if I'm Rick Grimes, I try and find some way to verify the information. Now, Rick Grimes himself just goes, okay, Atlanta, and off he goes.
Yeah, but how are you going to verify that? Look it up on the internet? I mean...
There's got to be... No, but, there's... He said that there were calls going out on radio and things like that before. Somebody's got to have some form of communication. I mean, and even simple things like walkers, I don't see the absolute ability to create fire. So if somebody makes a fire and is sending smoke up in the sky, that usually means people. So trying to verify something, moving more timidly into a situation than just balls out running in, which is kind of what it seems to me like Rick is doing, because they tell him about that and he's like, okay, Atlanta, let's go.
Did Morgan mention at all, I can't remember, if they've run into many other people?
He really didn't say anything about it. But this kind of furthers my question about Rick's act first and think later behavior that got him shot in the first place. That he didn't really give it two thoughts. Like, he's just like, all right, we're going to Atlanta. How about you, Jules? Do you hide out and try to wait till it blows over? Or do you head to the big city and hope the government knows what it's doing to contain it?
That's a good question. I think I would probably start by hiding out. But I think the more each day passed, I'd probably get a little bit more courage to try to make a plan and go into the city. Especially if I was not seeing any other people around, and maybe Morgan and Dwayne could join me on that, because they were why were they staying back?
Morgan wanted to learn how to shoot, and he wanted to get Dwayne proficient with a gun.
Yeah, Rick should have just stuck around there for a few more days, but...
Well, and especially since he was still healing.
Right.
I mean, he still had a wound that wasn't fully healed. He was still injured. No, I'm going to put on my old sheriff deputy outfit and head to town.
Run.
Dude, just heal, man. Rest for a few days. Eat some refried beans, because that's what it looked like they had. Just relax. Take a few days. Get your bearings. Find out what's going on. But nope. At least he has shoes, though.
Right. Especially when you don't see many other live people. I would think you would want to hold on to the ones that you have found and not necessarily separate, quickly if not necessary. And it wasn't necessary.
How about you, IG? Do you kind of pack it in, or do you head out to the city?
Again, we're at me. We're going to spend some days there. We're going to find out a little more about what's going on. I'm not heading to the city right away, because it really, at this point, should not make much difference if I'm there tomorrow or 2 weeks from now. This is obviously a problem that has been going on, because Morgan is very aware of how things work. Spending some time and learning more about how things work and what can happen, and maybe how you can protect yourself. That's more advantageous than trying to get to where help might be.
They return to the police station, or the sheriff's station, and Rick showers with Morgan and his boy, and then gives them the gift of firepower. Morgan declines Rick's deal, one of Rick's many deals that people seem to decline, to come to Atlanta with him. Rick sees his coworker, nemesis, Leon, kind of all walkered up and wandering around. He walks over and just kind of casually puts him down. Is there a coworker that you would happily help out if they were in the same situation as Leon?
There might be a few. Quite honestly. We've got some people that just never learn and always want to poke the bear. And I go to work and I have a good attitude and I smile and I just let them poke the bear. But, were this situation to arise and the repercussions are now gone from poking back, they'd get a resolution. A pretty quick one.
I think in that situation, work would be probably one of the first places I would help. I would want to help all my coworkers out if they were in that current situation. I would want to make sure that nobody suffered. Morgan goes back and looks at pictures of his wife as almost saying goodbye, but then he's unable to pull the trigger. IG, do you think reminiscing and looking at pictures is the best idea before trying to shoot somebody? I mean, would you be able to put someone down after strolling down memory lane with them?
That's got to make it so much more difficult. I mean, why don't you take out, your videos to Disneyland and then be like, happiest place on earth and seeing videos of you going on the Magic Mountain ride and riding in the teacups and stuff, and then go out and look at her and pull a trigger. It's not going to work. You need to separate yourself from what was and what is. And I know that, pictures are a part of all of us. I mean, they say that, people are taking more pictures now than ever before because of smartphone technology and everything else. So people have way more pictures, and people do actually look at them. It's not like they're taking the pictures and they go away. So taking your time to look at these and see your once beautiful wife and family and everything is going on, and then you look and you see the face that's all caved in and shrunken but you still see the person who it was. That's got to be a very difficult way to go about it. So the memory lane is really the wrong way to go about this.
On the other hand, we have Rick, who sought out a complete stranger in Bicycle Girl to put her out of her misery. Jules, considering their very two distinct courses of action, what do you think of Rick's character compared to Morgan's?
I like how Morgan is, and I understand where he's coming from. I don't think it was a good idea for him to look at pictures. I think he should have probably gone out in the dead of night, walked up behind her and killed her, because that would have probably been easier. But I definitely think I do give it to Rick for showing compassion. I mean, Bicycle Girl was only half a person just meandering around. I appreciate that he went and put her out of her misery.
Well, and it turns into, one is compassionate toward people, and it seems like Rick is compassionate toward the walkers, which is almost funny because what it really boils down to is Rick's mentality about this whole thing is Rick is a get shit done, let's move on kind of guy, where Morgan is still trying to hold on to the hope that there's some humanity left.
Mm-hmm. So we give him double thumbs up for full compassion for half a walker.
Yeah.
Hey.
Rick is in his car on the way to Atlanta. He's using the CB and getting which gets slightly picked up by a camp. And lo and behold, his good friend Shane is alive. Linda, when you first saw the camp and you saw Shane, did you have any idea that was Lori and Carl with him?
I'll admit, I didn't really put it all together immediately. It just wasn't on my radar. I was much more focused on the fact that Shane was alive, and if Shane's alive, who else is alive? But no, I didn't think that it was his wife and son immediately.
Jules, did you instantly despise Lori after you saw him kiss it and Shane, even though Rick hadn't been gone for that long?
No. Not necessarily. I think this is a situation that nobody knows how they're going to handle. So, what? I don't know. I didn't hate on her for it. I mean, hey, if you're in a stressful situation, your husband's gone, got to do what you got to do to get some comfort.
Wow.
Listen, girls got to get some. That's the attitude you're taking? Come on.
Something tells me her reaction would be different, though, if she was making out with Dale, but I don't know. Maybe it's the eyebrows. Rick runs out of gas and goes to a farmhouse looking to fill up, and he ends up finding a horse. There's another great visual there of a murder-suicide and some writing on the wall. Instantly iconic. So he decides to hoof it to Atlanta like some second-rate Clint Eastwood riding in to save the town. Yet another iconic scene is Rick rides into Atlanta with all the traffic headed out. It's also, fanboy alert, my cast poster that I'm having signed by everybody from The Walking Dead. IG, how badass was the visual of Rick riding into Atlanta on horseback?
Oh, that was so amazing. Just that shot. That shot alone, if nothing else in this episode grabbed you up until that point, that shot should have hooked you. That shot was so amazing, and the music playing in the background at the time was so entrancing that I mean, I was doing really well in this episode up until that point, and that shot alone, I was sold. I will watch The Walking Dead until it is canceled. They can do no wrong at this point, and they've done a lot wrong in the series. They've done a lot of things that I wasn't a fan of. They've done, the whole of season 2 was slow, and I didn't enjoy it as much, but it was that shot that kept me interested.
Coming into town, he rides through a small stream of walkers and a lot of military equipment, and then he hears a helicopter and begins to chase it, and he runs into a metric fuck ton of walkers. Our new friend Rick and his trusty steed are quickly surrounded. The horse goes down, and Rick leaves the bag of guns and grabs the cannoli as he's surrounded and goes under a tank. Linda, at that point, were you more worried about the horse, the bag of guns, or Rick?
The horse was a goner. There was no point worrying about the horse. Definitely the guns, mostly because I was pretty sure they weren't going to kill off the main character in the first episode. The guns. I was definitely concerned about what Rick was going to do without those guns. And yeah, he gets into the tank and he hangs out there for a while, but the guns for sure. Because that's the ticket out. That's the golden ticket. It's like if he didn't have those, he really had no way of defending himself or escaping, and he had no insurance, right? So yeah, that was sort of where my mind was instantly focused. And it's like that famous saying, if you put a gun on the table in the first act, you better fire it by the last. So that was where my attention was.
Well, could he even have carried enough ammunition to get him out of that metric fuck ton of people?
That was my next question.
Granted, he was outnumbered, and the other people were armed tooth and nail.
Completely. I was worried about Rick, obviously. I was not worried about the guns. I just thought that was just a casualty. And as far as the horse goes, I'm sorry for the horse. He was minding his own business and got dragged into this. But he was at least a distraction for some of those walkers, you know what I mean, to focus on. So I definitely was worried about Rick because it was how will you get out of this?
And the episode really ends in a great way, the same way that it began, with Rick trapped in the tank, and the radio crackles to life, and he said, a voice comes over and says, "Hey, dumbass, you in the tank, are you cozy in there?" They use a great overhead shot to show exactly how fucked Rick is as the walkers swarm not only the tank, but the horse, and fantastic use of space junk by Wang Chung. As the all-you-can-eat horse buffet goes on outside, IG, were you thinking, how the fuck is Rick Grimes going to get out of this tank?
How's anybody going to get out of that tank? It's like these walkers sense, it's like the T-Rex from Jurassic Park, they motion and heat and all these things. It knows, and they're all still trying to get into the tank, so they know he's in there. I guess eventually maybe they'll lose interest and go, well, maybe he died in there now. We can just kind of do our walker talk, go different directions, do whatever walkers do when they're not eating. But he's still going to have to get somewhere, and there are walkers to every direction. So I was very concerned on this first episode, and then I really wanted to know who the fuck was talking to it.
Hey, Jules, your thoughts on the episode, and what do you rate it?
It was an amazing episode. Obviously, it caught me right from jump on episode 1. Any TV show that can get me from jump, I love it. So I definitely, I probably rated that very first episode like an 8.5, and I wanted to know more. I think it's a great episode. The only thing I took issue with in this episode, by the way, was when he was coming in on the horse and that shot you were talking about, everybody was trying to leave. That is the one thing I keep taking issue with in this episode. Maybe why it only got an 8.5 is why are all the cars, it feels like this was an Armageddon type of everybody left behind went at once. Why would all the cars be lined up like that? Everybody couldn't have died all at once.
Traffic.
Gridlock happens, and then to try and keep themselves alive, they get out of their cars and start walking somewhere. So, if a major enough accident happened further up the road and the dividers can't be moved out of the way, the cars are going to stay. And if you think you got to go, I guess even me in that same situation, if I'm driving out of town, gridlock happens, nobody's moving, I'm getting out of the car and I'm going somewhere. I'm not going to just sit here and wait.
Well, even if you know, like, people are turning into zombies and they'll eat you?
Yeah, but they're going to eat me if I'm in my car, too, and I can't survive in this car forever. I can't possibly have enough stuff in this car. So while your point is appropriate and valid, there are reasons.
Gotcha. All right, well, I give it an 8.5.
Okay, Lynn, how about you? Final thoughts and your rating.
Well, I really liked it. I liked the pacing. I liked the characters. Coming right off the comic book, I thought that the extra small scenes we got were really amazing and incredible. I agree that the little girl with her bunny slippers was really just a fascinating image for me. I'd give it a solid 9. I really enjoyed the first episode. It was really only later in the seasons that started to lose my interest.
To me, this episode was a 10. It was love at first sight from beginning to end. The first visual of Addie Miller being shot all the way to Rick stuck in the tank and being swarmed. The music, the pacing, the character choices. The only thing I wasn't crazy about, like I said, was those 2 small flaws with the walkers. Outside of Walter White, Rick Grimes has been my favorite catalyst over the years. Good, bad, crazy, or indifferent. I love this show. As The Walking Dead goes, so does Rick. It's one of my top 5 episodes of the series. I've watched it at least 25 times, and I'll probably watch it 25 more. I mean, when there's nothing on TV, the first episode, Days Gone By of The Walking Dead, is my go-to show, and it'll probably remain that way for quite some time.
So for me, this is a 9.5 episode. It is absolutely amazing, and this really set the tone for the entire series. Cinematically, this is a beautifully shot episode. There are so many iconic shots, and the camera work, the lighting, the composition of everything is just absolutely beautiful. And some of that has to do with shooting in Georgia, and Georgia's a very beautiful place in our country. But just the way that they took these beautiful places and then made them look as if they've been through an apocalypse, and then showed the contrast between how things are and how things could be, really sold everything on me. This was by far one of the best episodes of The Walking Dead. Now, there have been some other ones that have been right on par with this, if not even just a little bit better, but this set it all up. This sold it for me, and I mean, Lenny James, amazing acting. Andrew Lincoln is so good in this, and it just wanted to pull you in further. So there you go, Cynic Radio Podcast, Season 1, Episode 1 of The Walking Dead. We're going to give it a 9 for the whole show. This is great, and if you have not yet started watching The Walking Dead, the first 6 seasons are on Netflix right now. Go check them out. It's The Walking Dead, and we'll be back at some point talking more Walking Dead. We can't wait to have you with us. Coming up next, here comes Really.
So now, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, it's time for Really. I'd explain it. Just listen. You'll get it.
My Really this week goes out to the always honest, always friendly, and always on point Secretary of the Press, Sean Spicer. This week, he gave us his trumped-up version on why Assad is such a bad guy.
You look, we didn't use chemical weapons in World War II. You had someone as despicable as Hitler who didn't even sink to using chemical weapons.
Wait a second, Sean. What was that?
Someone as despicable as Hitler who didn't even sink to using chemical weapons.
Well, I agree with Sean. Assad is a bad guy doing heinous things. But let us not forget that President Trump advised President Obama repeatedly not to attack him because it's a no-win situation. Syria is now and has always been an international problem. But Sean, while you're revising history, let us remind you of the millions of people Hitler put to death in gas chambers. While we are all grateful with your keen grasp of the past, you don't hold a more important position, say like high school history teacher. For this week, Sean Spicer, Really?
Really for me this week goes out to Nintendo, who just announced that they are discontinuing the NES Classic. I still can't get one, and the price shot way up on eBay for anybody that does have one. The $60 consoles are now selling for upwards of $300 on eBay now, and they aren't going to get any more. So pretty soon, nobody's going to be able to get an NES Classic. And this console is just fun and nostalgic, and it's something that we all wanted, even just to play for a couple hours a year, just to bring back that old memory of the games gone by. So Nintendo, why would you do this? Why would you show us something, take our hearts and rip them from our chests? Nintendo, really?
Well, the award for the most obvious really goes out this week to, let's say it all together now, United Airlines. And what has to be the most colossal clusterfuck, besides every week in the Trump administration so far, United Airlines saw fit to have passenger Dr. David Dow forcibly removed after losing in the United "you lose your seat because we have crew that needs to get other places" lottery. And when Dow stated he could not take a later flight as he had patients to attend to, this led him to receive a broken nose, lost 2 front teeth, and received a concussion courtesy of the United Airlines Fight Club security staff. The biggest screw up here, in my opinion, is the fact that United was unwilling to make the pot just a little bit sweeter to entice people to get off the plane on their own accord. United has the money to offer to get the people off the flight if they desperately needed the seat for the aircrew on another plane. This is their screw up, no one else's. So that is a pill they just needed to swallow for that screw up. Ultimately, by the next day, their stock dropped and it had cost them $255 million. In hindsight, I bet a couple extra hundies and not having a gazillion memes about your terrible security practices seems like a much better choice now. So United Airlines, really?
And that's going to do it for episode 27 of the Cynic Radio podcast. We had a great time going in the Wayback Machine and talking about the very first episode of The Walking Dead. We'll be sure to be coming back with more things you'll love to listen to, including more Walking Dead, all the new and upcoming Marvel movies, Game of Thrones, and Fear the Walking Dead. I'm sure we're going to find time for Fear the Walking Dead. I'm Igrahi. With me, as always, is my co-host Cynic. Joining us this week is Jules and the uncanny Linda. Send us your comments, questions, concerns, and a pair of shoes to cynicradio@gmail.com. Find us on the internet at cynicradio.com. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/cynicradio. And look for us on Twitter at cynicradio. And until next time, don't get captured.
Follow the podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and at cynicradio.com. Available for download on iTunes.
What is the deal with these matches?